Even though it goes against the grain of the entire Resident Evil franchise, Chris Redfield's combat-focused campaign is the most well-balanced of all the others in the game. It fits the game's new action-focused design like a glove by focusing more on combat arenas and cover-based shooting. This is not to say it is a direction I feel the series should go. I merely found Chris Redfield's campaign to be the best executed based on the direction Capcom chose, and the most enjoyable of the bunch. The campaign is still overly difficult in a number of sections, swarming you with hard-to-kill beasts and unlikely odds. Resilient foes that can withstand multiple headshots don't exactly gel with the high-speed nature of combat. Even so, Redfield's campaign feels designed to take advantage of the various weapons and tools at the player's disposal in a manner the other campaigns simply do not. For example, there's a brutish monster with a tough hide exclusive to Chris's campaign. Best way to get past its thick shells with a grenade or similar explosive, a requirement that could easily have become rather annoying. However, it instead encourages the player to be more resourceful and consider how they want to use their equipment. The player is now mentally prepared to keep explosives on hand just in case they face more of these creatures, and by the time the brutes start to show up regularly, the player is provided with a grenade launcher and plenty of ammunition. What could have been a frustrating monster ends up spicing up encounters instead. At least until the inevitable crowd swarming occurs. Altogether, Chris's campaign is filled with a variety of arenas and encounters that simply make combat the most satisfying. It's not really horrifying, but it works the best with the new combat system. The game also manages to break up the action best with Chris Redfield's campaign. While some of them don't quite work, and others really don't work, other sequences and encounters manage to be quite enjoyable. Manning the turret on a Humvee and piloting a fighter jet give the player that much needed break from tension by switching the gears to empowerment. Perhaps the most interesting encounter, which ironically enough gets horror the best in the entire game, is the snake with camouflage. The snake can appear from anywhere, and the player must rely on the shifting scenery in order to spot it in time. The timing of its appearance is absolutely perfect, as there is enough time to prevent it from striking, but not a large enough window that the player won't be sweating it the whole time. It is perhaps the most satisfying boss fight in Chris Redfield's campaign, and one of the better throughout the entirety of the game. Well, except for the rather simple and disappointing final phase. There's no real challenge, and the snake easily forces Chris through a stumble animation that can't really be avoided. Despite a mostly solid campaign, Capcom managed to fumble on Redfield's final boss, though. While not nearly so many dragged-out phases as Leon's, the final boss here is... Chris? Most of the final encounter revolves around fleeing the monster, which, thanks to quick-time events and not quite perfected controls, can lead to a couple of irritating deaths. The first actual confrontation is pretty much running in circles pumping ammo into the beast without much hassle. The second fight, on the other hand, is, well, peculiar. You see, Piers becomes infected, more on that later, and gains super lightning powers, an ability you'd think they'd give to the first player. After all, it's like getting the ultimate super weapon you need to defeat the monster, but, well, player 2 gets it, and if you're only playing a single player game, then that means the AI gets it, unless you've been playing as Piers for some reason. That's just a minor gripe, and is just as much narrative-based as it is mechanic-based. The real problem is that the game once again expects the player to be close enough for melee after dealing enough damage to the monster. It has clear and obvious weak points, but no matter how many bullets you plug away, you won't kill the thing. The game instead demands that the player stabs at it with a knife while it's down, but never provides any indication. Pierce never tells you to stab it. Chris never says, maybe I ought to stab it. No icon on the interface says, hey, idiot, try stabbing it in the heart. A player could spend several attempts trying to figure out the proper trick to killing it, and never realize they have to get up close and personal. If the game only gave that clear indication, the final boss in Redfield's campaign would also be the best. Instead, it's a bit of a sour finale to the only set of missions really worth going back to replay. While the story in Leon's campaign was disappointing due to the overall stupidity of the plot, Chris's campaign is disappointing because of its potential. It may be a strange thing to say, but this was Capcom's chance to really do something with the Chris Redfield character. Ever since the first game, he has been a rather bland protagonist. No real personality except for the good soldier routine developed by Resident Evil 5 and Revelations. He does what is right because it is the right thing to do. Resident Evil 6 actually provides the perfect catalyst to finally do something with that personality.
Witness! She's the one who did all this!
No, it wasn't her, it was Simmons.
the National Security Advisor. I lost all my men because of her!
Think about how long Chris has been fighting bioterrorism for. It began in 1998 in the Arklay Mountains and continues to 2013, the year that Resident Evil 6 takes place. 15 solid years of seeing good people die because greedy, self-serving, or insane people commit horrific acts. That's going to wear on a man's sanity, and by Resident Evil 6 you'd think Chris Redfield would be as jaded as they come. While the game begins with an amnesiac Chris Redfield, the story chronologically begins during a confrontation in Eastern Europe. We're also introduced to Pierce Niven, a much younger soldier but still quite experienced. It's clear that Chris Redfield is still Mr. Good Soldier, but he's got wisdom and experience that Pierce doesn't have. When they encounter Sherry and Jake, Pierce is just about ready to execute Jake on the spot for being a mercenary, let alone for his attitude. Chris is the one that keeps the cool head and allows Sherry to continue on her own mission. From here on, the two characters will discuss and even argue about what the mission means. Pierce views it quite simply, to fight and stop bioterrorism. Chris's experience could provide an opportunity for Pierce to understand just what the big picture to that idea really is. It isn't the monsters or even the mercenaries you have to stop, but the individuals that cause it. The confrontation in Eastern Europe concludes with Ada 2, the evil Ada. She tricks and traps Chris Redfield's men, transforming them into monsters that cause Chris to suffer a head wound and thus gain amnesia. This takes us to the beginning of the campaign, where Chris has been spending his life as a drunk for reasons. Pierce and the rest of Redfield's men get him and try to jog his memory, convincing him to return to the Force. Despite showcasing some clear muscle memory, it doesn't make a lot of sense to pull an amnesiac into the front lines of a major outbreak. While Chris may have muscle memory, he doesn't necessarily possess the conscious skills required. Chris Redfield has, for all intents and purposes, never been in a firefight. He's never seen a man die before his very eyes. He's also never seen anyone transform into a monstrous creature with nightmarish limbs, or at least he can't remember having seen these things. Chris should be panicking and shouting, "Get me out of here," but instead goes along as if he's done this all before with only a handful of startled reactions. He behaves more like he voluntarily left the Force rather than suffering from amnesia. When he finally does get his memory back, Chris becomes fueled with nothing but the desire for revenge. His mission turns into killing Ada, the woman who had killed his men. As far as he is concerned, she's the one responsible. This is where Pierce partially serves his purpose. He is there to try and remind Chris that he's a professional and that they have a mission. Chris doesn't have all the necessary data, and killing Ada prematurely could cost them vital information regarding the outbreak. However, Pierce seems to focus too much on the idea of trying to purge the city of all infected, a near worthless battle. There's no progress there. The confrontation with Leon should be where we really get a sense of how heavy the burden has become on Chris. It's not just his men that died because of Ada, it's all the people who have died because of Wesker, Umbrella, and all the other corrupt cult leaders and businessmen that would spread such weapons across the earth. Ada should represent a symbol of the foe that Chris just cannot get rid of, the nemesis he is always forced to do battle with. Which is why Jake being Wesker's son would also be so important. Chris comes clean in the final chapter about how Jake's father died, how he was the one who killed Wesker. This should be a moment of clarity for Chris. While Wesker himself was an evil, selfish man, Jake was not inherently evil himself. In fact, while he carried the same blood, Jake was going to use it for good instead. This should be the final lesson that Chris, and by extension Pierce, learns. That all of this pain and hardship over the years can do some good, and while things seem to be getting worse, that good can blossom out of such trials and hardships. Hope for the future and all that. Now, I say final lesson because what really disappointed me about Redfield's campaign was the ending. Specifically, that Chris Redfield survived. In order to save Chris, Pierce injects himself with the virus and mutates. Eventually, he will go insane from the infection, so he forces Chris into an escape hatch as the facility detonates and he kills the latest bioweapon. The way Capcom tells it, there's very little growth here. The biggest arc you get is Chris finally decides he won't just up and kill Ada, even though she ends up dying anyway. Well, Ada 2 at least. Chris and Pierce argued, but there was no resolution. Neither of them grew as people. If the roles had been reversed, however, if Chris had instead injected himself in order to save Pierce, then the story changes. It turns into a story about Chris Redfield's final mission, about how he remembered what was at stake, what the mission meant, and most importantly, creating hope for the future. Chris was becoming jaded and tired, and thus he opens the door for the next generation by saving Pierce. Chris Redfield should have been the one to sacrifice himself, dying the noble hero's death, and leaving Pierce to take his place. Pierce, meanwhile, gets to learn those same lessons that Chris learned, preparing himself to now carry the torch. In a series whose narrative is a total clusterfuck, This is an event that could have actually shaken things up a bit. You suddenly have a character with background and even personality. Instead, we're simply left with what will Chris Redfield face next. Nothing profound comes from it, and Pierce's character simply exists to die. As for the rest of the story, not much is really explained in Chris's campaign. There's chaos in Eastern Europe for reasons, and Chris basically spends the entire campaign chasing down Ada 2 only to find her dead. The most significant overarching plot point is the undersea base where Neo Umbrella was growing their latest experiment, which is defeated in epic blockbuster bombastics. Thus ends the best campaign in Resident Evil 6, whose narrative had the most potential. Next time, the narrative that continues to have the most potential moving forward.